church won't touch. The Christian Theological Dark Web Podcast.
Hey guys, I know that the audio and video are out of sync on this interview, but it is an absolute fire conversation with Austin Cox. So stick around, definitely listen, bear with it. The audio is pretty much impeccable, so you should enjoy this episode if nothing else. All right, see you guys on the other side. Take care.
Welcome, Dark Web theologians and Four Dragon friends. Well, goodness gracious, it's been a while since we've had a guest on this beloved show. Hope you guys are doing awesome wherever you're at, and I want to let you know you are in for a treat today. We're having back a very long-anticipated guest. Shoot, been almost a year now, if not a year, that we haven't actually had a chance to really sit down and talk. But this wonderful gentleman and I share very many interests in everything Asian. And I think it's one of those things we just kind of felt drawn to that part of the world. It's not really something you can explain. It's just one of those things, right? Some call it wanderlust. Others call it, there's another word in German I can't think of. But we are today going to be covering Shinto, which is the native belief system for the most part, or I'd say probably the most fundamental native belief system of Japan, of ancient Japan, which still lives today, and quite frankly, is embedded in so much of the culture. Now that I have understood it a little bit better, it's pretty wild. But I don't want to keep you guys in anticipation too long. You've been patient to listen to my beautiful intro. If you are not subscribed, do that now. What are you doing? Give it a like, turn on the bell, all the stuff you're supposed to do to make sure you're following us. You can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on X, on all the stuff. So go do that. What are you waiting for? But of course, without further ado, without any more tardiness, without wasting another second, I introduce you all to Mr. Austin Cox, also known as the Catholic Kappa. So what an appropriate name. How you doing, my guy?
I'm doing good, Ricky. How are you, man?
Been a long time, dude, but we are doing awesome. A long time, man.
Praise be to God.
Yes. Thank God we're still alive and able to live another day and serve the King, man.
Amen.
Austin, I know that we've talked many times about this kind of thing, dude, but I'd love for you to give just kind of a short synopsis about who you are, any projects you think that you have going on that you kind of mentioned off camera to me, and also anything you think is important for the listeners to know about you, your interests, or anything you think is important. So the floor is yours, my man. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back, Ricky. Hey, everybody. My name is Austin. I am a recent Catholic convert. By the time this episode drops, I should be fully confirmed. But I am, as Ricky said, very interested in Japanese culture, Japanese history, and that way of life. I actually, at one point in time, was an appointed missionary to Japan. Now I run a ministry called Ukon's Lantern Ministries, which you can check out. And it basically exists to tell the stories of the Japanese faithful, the martyrs, the saints. And it's named after my patron, the Blessed Ukon Takayama. And we could do a whole episode on him just
I think
by
we should.
himself. Yeah, let's
totally
do it.
should.
Let's do it. And if you're interested in that kind of thing, I'm actually working really closely with EWTN on a documentary about the man. So you can look forward to checking that out.
And EWTN, for those of us non-converts, what does that translate to, my man?
Eternal Word Television Network. If you've ever seen the old lady nun, Mother Angelica, God rest her soul, she was the creator of that channel, and I think she reached her and Bishop Barron and that whole crew reached so many people with the gospel, dude.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's really exciting, dude. You got some crazy stuff going on, guys. I really recommend before we get started, support what Austin is doing. They're trying to get his favorite extra official Christian saint. What do they call it? Canonized, or what is it called?
He's beatified now, so he's the Blessed Ukon Takayama, and I think he's got 2 miracles associated with them, and he needs 3 to be considered for sainthood.
All right, we're shooting for 3. It's like not the 3 strikes; it's the 3 out of the parks. That's what it needs. Anyway, if nothing else, just go support him. He is a God-fearing, God-loving man, and you know that on this channel, guys, we're not, we don't believe just any faith will go, but we try to be as ecumenical as possible and just share as much Christian history and love as we can. That's really what I've always tried to focus on. Maybe I haven't always worded it that way, but that I think is the most appropriate thing. Is we're really trying to represent Christ, and I think that the best way to do that is the way His Word tells us to, which is being united and loving one another in spite of our differences or maybe sometimes our different ideas. So go give Austin support, shout out, financial support to him, pray for him. He was telling me off camera he almost went on a recent pilgrimage to Japan, right?
Yep, I was bound to Nagasaki this August or September, and then we had what Bob Ross would call a happy little accident, and my wife is expecting a new son, Kai,
Awesome.
coming in that time frame. So yeah,
That's exciting.
I don't let any grass grow under my feet, apparently.
That's awesome.
For real.
Well, today, guys, we're gonna get right into this. We were talking, like I said, about Shinto today, and Austin, I want to start this out just kind of with definitionally. I mean, you know how I am, right? I like to look at the etymology of absolutely everything.
Etymology, yeah.
The most stunning thing to me, sorry, I got some mint in my mouth here, guys, if you're hearing me like talk like a marble mouth. The most stunning thing to me about Shinto is what the words mean, or the word means. When you're a Westerner, or you're a non-Asiatic, I should just say, especially if there's anything involving characters in particular, but especially even places like Vietnam, places like Singapore obviously uses Chinese characters, China, obviously, even Korea, there's tons of, obviously Japan does too, because it's incorporated into their language, but even Korea has vestigial uses of lots of Chinese characters. And the reason that I mention that is that the characters themselves, shoot, man, maybe we need to do a whole episode about that. Those characters are wild, but
oh yes,
they are very much on the same wavelength as like how the Hebrew language is written and how it's believed to correspond to divine things. Very, very, very divine things. And that's not super uncommon, but there is something really peculiar and particular about Chinese characters that really kind of, I don't know, it encapsulates things, and it just, the younger generation would say it hits different, right? I mean, that's kind of So Shinto means, and I'm just breaking this down for you guys because this is probably very surprising to a lot of people. It literally means the way of the gods, which is wild. That's a wild thing to call your religion, right? I mean, thoughts, my man.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And as a matter of fact, going back to talking about the Chinese language, it could actually be pronounced Shin Tao. And if you know that Taoism is the way of the yin and yang.
Yes.
So you've got, some correlation there. And Japan and China have always been extremely interconnected. So it's really no surprise. And it's funny, you talk about divine things. China was originally monotheistic. They worshipped a high god called Huangdi. So it's just funny how all of this stuff, kind of comes together when you start peeling back the layers of history.
Yeah. It's wild stuff, man. And that's interesting. You said that about Tao. Shin sounds like the Chinese word Shen, which means God or kami, right? For what am I thinking? The Japanese pronunciation. So it's right up that alley. And as Westerners, especially if you're not really initiated into any kind of character reading or anything like that, it's kind of, what's the word? It's sort of a non-factor to you, right? And it kind of that Romanization, right, turning everything into English letters or Latinized letters, it makes you, it just kind of, you're nonplussed by it. You're like, wow, it's cool, it sounds interesting. When you break it down, you look at the characters, you go, whoa, this is some heavy stuff. No, it's not not a joke, man.
Oh,
Um,
I'll even challenge you a little bit. Hebrew and well, particularly Hebrew and Aramaic are like that too. The
yes.
Asiatic languages, they are loaded with meaning.
Yep. Yep. I mean, meaning upon meaning. And that's exactly how Hebrews in particular. Don't know a ton about Aramaic, but I know that Hebrew is very much like that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So today we wanted to cover kind of an overall view of stuff. And I think you know the mythology better. And I think that's probably a better way to start. Give us any background you think that we should know about,
Yeah.
about Shinto, about the mythology around it. And yeah, feel free to take it from here, man.
Well, I think it's important to start in the prehistoric age because the Shinto priests and the shrine maidens and I guess religious leaders of Japan claim that their religion is as old as the Japanese civilization itself. So going back to that point, we would start at what's called the Jomon period.
Okay.
And the Jomon period lasted from about 10,000 BC to 300 AD. And yes, I'm going to
Hmm.
use AD and BC. Sorry if that offends you. But yeah, it was essentially the Japanese Stone Age. So people
Hmm.
were hunter gatherers, they were living in huts. They would from what we can gather of their religion, it was nature based. And
Hmm.
we have little figurines. You've probably seen them. They're called dogu figurines, and they
Hmm.
look like aliens, but we think they're probably some kind of god or deity or spirit. But what's fascinating is when you exit that Jomon period and you go into what's called the Yayoi period, you start to notice that these villages, when people start settling down in permanent villages, the villages are always oriented towards a place of natural beauty. So a
Hmm.
waterfall or a mountain, a river, a lake, the village is always oriented towards that.
Hmm.
So we're already starting to see this nature-based religion starting to take shape.
Yeah.
And of
That's
course, you've got continental influence coming in,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
from from the earliest stages, what these people believed has been rooted in natural beauty and in nature.
Mm, that's interesting, man. Just a few thoughts here. I may have mentioned this on previous episodes, and I'm sure you're actually probably very familiarized with this, but
Mhm.
the Chinese garden is very reflective of this, especially anybody that had money to be able to make a Chinese garden. It's
Mhm.
super reflective of this type of nature based, not only worship, but just overall spiritual interaction, right?
Mhm.
um the kind of the Chinese way of looking at it, which is definitely distinct. It's hard to explain the flavor difference, but you know it when you see it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's the idea, right? There's always something hidden, and around the next corner when you're walking through the garden, suddenly there's this massive landscape that just looks super distinct, and then behind
Mhm.
that there's suddenly a forest, and behind that there's suddenly a meadow, just all these very different tonalities and playing with light as well, right? And I think
Mhm.
that that's actually, as far as I can tell, from a very different vibe. I don't know what else to call it, but Shinto is very much that same way in that the natural processes of the regular processes, I should say, of nature really play into the spirituality and aspects of it. And I think that that's a complex thing to understand.
Mhm.
Frankly, it's very weird to a lot of Western ideas and minds.
Yeah, because I mean, we have no problem, destroying an entire mountain or forest to make way for a highway or an aqueduct or some kind of
Hmm.
construction project. But in Japan, if they're building a road and they realize that it's going through a sacred site or a shrine or even a tree that's over 1,000 years old, they
Yeah.
will halt the construction and reroute around it because they have such a reverence for their natural beauty of their country. And honestly, I like that.
Yeah.
I'm not a syncretist or anything like that, but I love nature. I love the outdoors, and I think that's one of those aspects that we can glean from another worldview.
Austin, would you define that for us, synchronist?
So syncretism is essentially where you take some kind of folk belief
Mhm.
and you integrate it
Gotcha.
into the worldview of
Mhm.
Christianity, or sometimes the Jews would do it. Muslims did it from time to time. It's just
Christians
basically,
still do it.
yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, it's basically just mixing
Yep.
beliefs together.
Yep. Yep. Just some sort of cultural or para-religious phenomena, right? And you kind of
Mhm.
incorporate it into your belief system. Cool. I just want to make sure we
Oh yeah.
cover those grounds because some people be like, "Oh, what's that?" Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So you were saying, Austin, that once you get to the Yayoi period, you start to see
Mhm.
everything oriented towards beautiful aspects in nature. Why is that so important, bro?
Because essentially what's happening there is people are starting to settle in permanent locations.
I see.
And yeah, so they're going from a hunter-gatherer society to more of a farming. Rice farming was,
Right.
the big innovation in Japan. I mean, to this
Yeah.
day, it's rice paddies everywhere. But what's significant about that is when a shrine was constructed, it was pretty much a permanent structure. And some of these shrines that are in, especially in the southern part of Honshu around Kyoto and Nara and places like that,
Mhm.
go back almost to that Yayoi period.
That's
Um,
wild. Yayoi is
yeah,
just after the 300s or so.
yep, yep.
Wow. Wow, that's wild. That's really wild. Man, you got me thinking about some other stuff now. I don't want to dwell on that too much. But so when do we start to see Shintoism sort of starting to form? I actually, as far as historicity goes, I don't know time frame super well. I mean, I kind of have an idea because we're going to get into like Kojiki and the Nihon. What is it?
Nihon Shoki.
Nihon Shoki. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Kind of explain a little bit like time frames, what we're coming into.
So that's kind of the big question mark that a lot of religious scholars,
Hmm.
myself included, I just wrote a paper on this. Is when did modern Shinto as we know it begin? Because what you have to understand about Japan is the modern Japanese are descendant of the Yamato people. So let me back up for a minute. So I talked about the Jomon and the Yayoi period, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the Jomon people were the original inhabitants of Japan.
Hey,
The Ainu
quick,
that you hear about.
yeah, quick stop. I was going to say that that's still an indigenous people that
Yep.
preserve their own particular traditions, and they're very,
Yep.
I mean, not super separate from the rest of the Japanese, but they are very distinct looking and distinct
Yes.
acting.
Yes. And what's interesting about them is they're considered the Northwestern people. And if we have any
Okay.
listeners in Seattle and Oregon and places like that, they actually, their beliefs and practices are eerily similar to the Native Americans that lived in the Pacific Northwest.
Hmm.
But all that aside, the Ainu are the descendants of the Jomon people that were kind of pushed out of southern Japan. And the reason they were pushed out of southern Japan is the Yamato people migrated from the Korean peninsula over to Japan. So the modern Japanese are mostly Yamato. And what you
Okay.
have, and you may know more about the dynasties and things that were going on during this period in China, when the Yamato people came to Japan and they started, basically their own culture.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They brought with them bronze mirrors and figurines and things like that.
Hmm.
And that's when you really start to see a cohesive spirituality starting to form. Now, we still don't know exactly what that spirituality entailed because it's such a dark age. And I
Yeah.
don't mean dark, in the literal sense, but nobody really knows what was going on there because
Right.
during the Yayoi period, there was no formalized system of writing.
So
Um,
that was the 300s, yes?
yes.
And there was no formal. Wow. So I can definitely give you insight as to what was happening in China at that time. Now, it
Mhm.
behooves us to mention that Japan is farther north than Taiwan is, for example. And Taiwan was,
Mhm.
largely indigenous for, I mean, shoot, there's still tons of tribes there's like 14 different tribes that still live in Taiwan indigenously. And however, I'm trying to think, you know, I'm thinking like Genghis Khan, and I'm thinking about all the Mongols at that period. I think that's about the period they were there. And I know that there's a theory that very likely the Mongolian people are the descendants of the more modern Japanese, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
Hmm.
what is interesting, mm, that's really a bizarre feature to not have a writing system, because
Hmm.
the Chinese were like on top of that, dude, and they were complexly on top of that. So when we're
Oh,
talking
big
about the 300s, the Yoyai period, that's a very particularly interesting period for China, because it's about 220 BC to about 220 AD in China. You have the former and the later Han periods, and
time.
those periods are the most formative periods for what the Chinese now refer to themselves as. They refer to themselves as the Han Chinese,
Yep.
and so that's where you get that modern term from. And really, a lot of those characteristics stem from that. So we're talking maybe, shoot, I mean, that's like 80, maybe 100-year difference. It's really not that much time for that kind of migration, you know, relatively speaking, because, depending on how far you're going to bridge out into another island and stuff like that,
Mhm.
it would seem to me that there was certainly a breaking off, at least a breaking off from China at some point, if not just like Mongolians being totally separate for a really long time, or some other tribal people from
Right.
what would be, I guess, northern China. It's not China now, but I mean, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's really interesting, because China was like well established with its writing system. And in
Yeah.
fact, that period I just mentioned, with, like, I think there's like right around the time that we shift from AD to BC, there
Mhm.
was I don't remember how many years, like 30 years or something, of kind of like civil unrest. But other than that, that whole 450 years is like the Chinese Renaissance, dude. That's like when
Yep.
everything was like blooming and flowering and growing. And so, yeah, it's a really fascinating period. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal the show there. I just was,
No, no, no. You're good, man.
relatively
Because
thinking about who's doing what.
I love timelines and seeing how they kind of
Mm-hmm.
overlap.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as Shinto goes, when we get to the meat of it, like let's
Mm-hmm.
just pretend we've breezed past the Jomon, the Yayoi. Let's
Yeah.
say we're in the Heian period right now,
Okay.
and
And we're
we
talking
have a what's that?
what time period? I know I can't think of time frame.
I can't think. Hold on, let me
That's
look.
fine. I got you. I got you. You keep going. I'll look it up.
But yeah, we do have a formalized system of Shinto at that point. Buddhism, I think, has entered the scene too. That's a different topic. But when we look at the two primary sources for Japanese religion, and we've already mentioned them, we have the Kojiki
Hmm.
and the Nihon Shoki.
Okay.
And these are two texts that
Hmm.
detail the legendary origins of Japan. The historicity, I don't know, it's kind of questionable, but
Sure.
this forms the backbone of Japanese Shinto belief. These are the
Hmm.
stories of their gods, how their people were created, how death entered the world, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of overlap. And Ricky, me and you talked about this through text.
Yeah.
The deeper you get into it, the more
Hmm.
parallels you start to see between it and ancient Near Eastern beliefs, which included the Hebrews and the Samaritans
Hmm.
and the Assyrians and those types of people. And we'll get into that. But essentially, what you need to know about the creation of the world according to Shinto beliefs is in the beginning, there was nothing.
Hmm.
And when I
Hmm.
say nothing, it's not like the nothing, pre God, in our worldview. Like God, spoke the world into existence and that was the beginning. This is a little different. What was there at the beginning was essentially this chaotic, oily sea. And if you think about it, God was hovering over the surface of the waters. That kind of evokes that image, to me. Um, but
Chaos, right?
Yeah, so you have, this chaotic sea that's just bubbling and churning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the first gods were already there, but they were distant. They were almost abstract. And what you end up having is you have two gods that just decide, hey, we're going to go and we're going to mess around in this water and see what happens.
Hmm.
And these two gods are Izanagi, who
Mm-hmm.
is a male,
Yeah.
and Izanami, which is a female. And they have this object, and I'm not even going to begin to try to pronounce it, but it's essentially a spear with a jewel in it. And
Okay.
what they do is they dip the spear into the sea and they just kind of churn the waters.
Hmm.
And when they pull the spear out of the sea, some droplets fall from the tip of the blade. And when they fall, they become the first islands of Japan.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And from that point, you basically have the narrative of Japan's creation. And the Nihon Shoki and the Kojiki, they don't deal, to my knowledge, with anyone else but Japan. There's
Yeah.
no other people that it really deals with. So, yeah.
So Heian period, just for your reference, is just before 880. So right,
Mm,
I mean, the Kojiki was, oh gosh, golly, 720 AD, somewhere around there, I
mhm.
think is right. I'm
Yeah.
not exactly
Yep.
sure. So, but yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Nihon Shoki, right? Like by definition, Nihon is, Japan is
Japan.
they're keeping it all in the family. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes. And we'll get into some of that too. So, continuing on, with the narrative, because, Izanami and Izanagi, these are important gods. They're pretty much the creators. They're the divine male and the divine female. But
Yes,
something
that's exactly right.
happens. Izanami gives birth to the fire god. And as she is giving birth, the fire god actually burns her to death and she dies. So you've already got, tragedy entering the world.
Yeah.
Well, Izanagi is so enraged that he kills the kid, and from the scattered body parts come other gods. I don't know that they have names or anything like that, but just gods is what the narrative says. So, and this is where it gets interesting because there are so many parallels to this type of story throughout the world. Izanagi decides that he's gonna go into the underworld. Now, in Japan, the
Mm-hmm.
underworld is called Yomi,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it translates to like the shadowed lands or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a place kind of like Sheol in Hebrew cosmology. It's a really
Mm-hmm.
dark place. It's a place of despair where all of the dead go. And what Izanagi does is he goes into the underworld and attempts to bring her back to the land of the living. But there's a problem. When he turns to look at her in the light, he finds that she is completely rotted and disgusting looking.
Yeah.
So he nopes out of there, like he dips and he runs and she chases him. And what he does is he goes to the mouth of the cave where he entered the underworld. And just as her fingers are coming through the hole of the cave, he rolls a stone in front of it. So her fingers are caught, between the rock and the hole.
Oh wow.
So her fingers end up getting cut off, and that's how the gods Fujin and Raijin were created, the gods of thunder
Ooh.
and the gods of wind. So, and they're not the nicest people. they're demons pretty much. And that's kind of Izanami's revenge, like, well, my children are going to, rage against yours. So what you
Whoa.
have here is death
Mm.
enters the world and separation becomes permanent. So there's no way to go into the underworld anymore. Like
Hmm.
Izanagi has completely sealed it off. So what he does there is he decides, well, I've been in this dark, unholy place. I need to go and purify myself.
Right.
So he goes to a nearby pond or lake and he gets down in the water and, starts rinsing himself. And
Yeah.
as he does, he gives birth to three major gods. Now, if
Yes.
you remember any other names in Shinto, remember these three:
Yeah.
Amaterasu, the sun goddess;
Mm-hmm.
Tsukuyomi, the moon god, which is one of my favorites; and Susanoo, who is the god of storms and chaos.
Mm-hmm. You there?
Mhm. Oh, I was just waiting for you.
Oh, I'm sorry, dude.
No,
Oh no,
no.
yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely so sorry. I thought we like lost. I was like, is he gone? What is going on?
Nope,
Um,
nope.
I couldn't find the characters for Yomi, but that's totally, I'll take your word for it there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So actually, the one I read is a little bit different, but that's interesting. I mean, that's actually how myths are a lot of times. They're
Oh,
told a little
yeah.
bit different.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and so the one I had heard, and this may be helpful for you to kind of give some perspective, is that when he goes to hell, I mean, a lot of the pieces are the same, but maybe they're just shorter renditions, and so whenever they're
Oh, yeah.
rendered,
Oh,
they
yeah.
leave out some details and stuff like that. But one of the details that I thought was interesting is that he goes seeking Isa I always forget how to say her name. Izanami, right? Izanami. He's
Mhm.
Izanami is seeking out Izanami in Hades in the underworld, and he's like waiting outside this castle to see her. She says, "You can't come in here. You have to stay outside. You cannot
Yep.
look inside the castle. You can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it."
Mhm.
And he finally like gets restless, and he's like, "Dude, what this is stupid. I want to go." So he goes and he looks at her, and she's just disgusting. And so she's furious that he's, seeing her this way. And so she
Mhm.
just starts like chasing him, trying to kill him. And all of the, her minions, I don't remember who they are, but they start chasing after this guy, like trying to kill him. And the only way
Yep.
he's able to fight them off is throwing a bunch of peaches at him from a peach tree. And after that, he finally escapes. And it's just what you said. He bathes in the river, and it's actually really interesting in this book about Shinto that I've been reading. It describes each one of the pieces of clothing that he takes off as he's washing in this river, and each one of those is a type of kami, is a type of god, and
Yep.
it all corresponds to like really major things. And holy cow, man! From here, this is hard to know where to go because
Oh, yeah. There's so much lore and
yeah,
interconnectedness. And
Misagi,
like you said, every version of the story is a little bit different.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
differences in the story, have consequences. And it's just
right.
it's a very convoluted religion.
It is. It is, and so much so that people don't even think it's a religion, which is bizarre too. It's the most, what would you call Shintoism?
It's kind of like a folk religion almost.
Yeah, it's really weird because it's kind of a catch all everything. Like it doesn't care what
Hmm.
your actual spiritual belief is. It's like, yeah, just practice it anyway. It's sort of like,
Yep.
okay,
A lot of Japanese people don't know these
I have
stories,
no idea.
don't even really care. It's just like if you ask a Japanese person on the street, why do you have a shrine in your backyard
Yeah.
with this statue? Oh, I don't know. It's
Yep.
I just do it because I'm
Yep.
Japanese. Like that is the legit answer. Like
Yeah.
there's no exposition, no remorse or really anything. Just I do it because I'm Japanese. It's
Yep.
whatever.
Yep, yep, absolutely, man. It is. It's very bizarre. One thing I was going to mention that's really interesting in all this is that misagi is like, which is the bathing, right? Which is the
Mhm.
washing with water, which is
Mhm.
not. I mean, that's not weird actually for most religions. Most religions practice some sort of bathing or
Ritual
baptism or
washing, yeah.
ritual washing. But the particularly interesting part here is that the washing itself is what creates the gods.
Mhm.
It's a very strange thing. And actually was writing this down that one of the beliefs there that, what is it? Yamakage Shintoism believes is that I mean, and this is actually this is not uncommon either, right? In the old world, you had the ocean was seen as the feminine, right? The chaotic
Yep.
feminine.
Yep.
And in Japanese culture, the river represents the strong masculine. And even to this day, when there's practice of Shintoism, you have where the river and the sea, or the ocean rather, where they meet, that is seen as copulation, and it's actually seen
Yep.
as where the gods are created. So that is, in Shinto practice, the best place to bathe, because you're literally
Yep.
bathing in rebirth. And
Yep.
you just, it's wild, man. You see a lot of, when you start analyzing this stuff a little bit, you start to see a lot of those same things. I mean, and frankly, they're Christian and they're Hebraic, right? They're Jewish practices as well, right? I mean, these are not
Yep.
unfamiliar. It's very fascinating, and even like the way that the things that it represents are like, you and I would be like, oh yeah, that's like totally biblical, except that they think this about it, right? Like, or except that
Yep.
this is their interpretation of what that means. It's
Mhm.
really fascinating stuff. It's tricky, man, because it's like, I don't, and I guess I'll take the liberty to say this here, because you've kind of already pointed to it a little bit, is that Shinto doesn't really have a specific way to be done. I mean, there is
Nope.
sort of a way to do it, but not really, like not really, really. And so much so that there, just like any sect, there's a bunch of different sects of Shintoism, but it's so different that every shrine kind of has its own way to do things. I mean, it
Yep.
really does. There are the very basic things, which I think is something like you're supposed to clap twice to get the kami's attention,
Mhm.
and then you bow twice or something. You wash your hands, and then you
Yep.
clap once you leave, and bow one time once you leave, and that's the interaction with the kami, the gods. Sorry, the god is better, or
Yeah.
spirit, or whatever you want to call it, right? I mean, and even that, right? Kami is, I mean, as far as I can tell, everyone's like, whoa, it's not really a spirit, it's not really a god, it's more like an energy. I'm like, dude,
It's a god.
what you're talking about is an Elohim, homeboy. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
it's the same. It really, to me, they're like almost 100% Venn diagram on top of one another. Like,
Oh, for sure. For
totally.
sure. I mean, we know from sacred scripture, who stirred the waters in
Right.
the pool of Siloam and the pool of
Yeah.
Bethesda. It says the
Yeah.
angel stirred the water.
Yep.
And the more I'm thinking about this, the more I'm thinking, rebellious Elohim,
Oh yeah.
decide they're going to create their own place where they can be
Yeah.
worshipped. And I
Yeah.
mean, it fits. It
Yeah.
really does. And to go even further, I mean, you're talking about all of these things that kind of it's like we have parallels, but
Hmm.
they're skewed ever so
Right.
slightly.
Right.
If you look at the table of nations, every tribe in the world came from the area of Babel. So they
Right.
all had a common belief system. And over time, I mean, like playing a game of telephone, it
Yep.
slowly kind of disintegrates into polytheism.
Yeah.
But it's like we've said in other episodes, there's always a sky god, there's
Yep.
always a sea god, and there's always a god of the underworld.
Yep.
No matter what pantheon you look into, they are so similar.
Yeah. It is really particularly funny, especially in a country like Japan, that, I mean, and really a lot of these ideas, a lot of this, I mean, let's call it what it is. It is a pagan religion, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's pagan.
Um, a lot of this stuff seems so foreign to us from a place like Japan, because post World War II, Japan became a totally different place, like
Yeah.
totally different. And so, actually, I dare say a fair kind of equivalent for Japan is sort of like what has happened to our Christianity, right? That we've denied a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the bases for a lot of our beliefs, and then you ask a Christian why they believe such and such, and they can't tell you why.
They
They actually
can't. No.
don't know why, right? And I think that this is really a similar situation, right? They've gone through a post
Yep.
industrialization era, just like the United States has, just like Europe did. And so a lot of our beliefs are just, they've shed off.
Yep.
I heard I think you'll really like this. We're talking about history. I don't know where you stand with this. I think you kind of know where I stand. I
Mm-hmm.
am I lean old Earth. I'm not super convinced
Mm.
that we have a young Earth for a
Yeah,
lot of
I'm
reasons.
more old Earth too.
Yeah. Um, even that's complicated. Like I don't think that that's a cut and dry thing to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like, oh, it's young. Oh, it's old. I'm like, no, there's so many more factors at play that I think that that's a whole other topic. Anyway, the reason I mention it is that I was talking with David Paxton, my buddy I told you about from
Yeah.
Shadows of a Greater Reality.
Hmm.
Shameless plug. I'm also part of Shadows of a Greater Reality at this point, but
Give it a listen. It's good.
yeah, they're great, dude. And I'm great. No, I'm kidding. But he he said something that I was completely unawares of. The Esseans catalog as, what some people hate this. They hear the word and they just cringe because they're like, oh my God, stupid Christians with these ideas, these these evangelicals, these Protestants. Well, they hear the word dispensation and they're like immediately turned off. And to me, it's like, dude, just use a different word. They're like, you can call them
Mm.
eras, you can call them, a repartition of God's working hand or what he's doing in the earth, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of a moot point to me.
Like a timetable.
Yeah. And he says that the Esseans point out that they're divided into 7,000 years, and you can take this however you want. I'm just putting it out there because it's very interesting to me. The first 2,000 years are the time of chaos, which fits very well with the ancient world. The second 2,000 years is the time of the prophets and the kings and the establishment of civilizations, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
The third is this period of grace that we live in. And then the fourth, is coming down further down the road. But what's really interesting to me is that really that time of chaos, whatever time frame you want to give it, seems to fit really well with what we see throughout history. And I don't think that Japan is any different, to be honest, in that respect. I think it lines up really well, actually, and corresponds.
The earliest settlements in the Yayoi period, we found palisade walls and axe heads made of
Mm,
bronze and copper. So I mean, there was obviously warfare going on. I mean, when people settle anywhere,
yeah.
they're gonna fight.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
just the way it is.
For sure, man. For sure. Let me see here. So we've kind of covered the basis. Let's kind of cover some of just the beliefs that they have,
Mhm.
so we can kind of round off this first hour. And if you're listening, we are going to have I don't know how long we're going to go for after we finish this first hour. But if you're behind the paywall, you'll be able to check that out and everything behind it thereafter. So let's get right into this for the meantime, so we get the meat, and then you and I can we can riff off a bunch of these ideas on the other
Sure.
side of the paywall. So what I mean, we've already covered Misagi, right? Misagi is super essential, which is essentially,
Mhm.
and I will mention this one more thing before we move on, because I think it's super relevant. As I was doing this research, in fact, I actually have this written here in my notes because it was it just was like it jumped out at me, and I was like, well, duh. It seemed so obvious when I, took a step. Whenever you kind of take a step back from what you're studying for a little bit, you go, "Oh yeah, man, totally." So I actually looked up the characters from Misagi in Japanese, the actual Chinese characters or Japanese characters, whatever you call them, the kanji. And this is pretty wild because they both have the character base or the root for like ritual, and then they both have to do with cleansing and water. So one is waterside ritual. I looked it up in Chinese. Waterside ritual held at spring and autumn, and I think they do Misagi forcibly at
Mhm.
the autumn equinox. And then is it equinox or is it solstice? Right,
Yeah.
the solstice. Sorry. And then the other character actually can be used as an exorcist ceremony, which
Mhm.
has to do with the cleansing. Because there's a very different, concept of what water is for in Shinto. And what was really crazy to me is I realized why. Because before you go before the kami and you interact with the kami, you have to wash. You have
Yep.
to be clean. And the reason you have to be clean, is the explanation in Shinto is that, well, and this is going to sound super, what's the word during the early church? Oh gosh. the Greeks that were, oh man, Greeks and some other people that were
Gnostic.
they're very, it's going to
Gnostic.
sound very Gnostic. Thank you. I was trying to think of the word.
Mm,
It's going to sound super Gnostic, but there's a huge association that the physical has to be clean to have any kind of spiritual interaction, because the
hmm
physical is always dirty, it's always corrupted, it's always wrong, essentially. Not quite to that extent as in the Gnostic way, but it leans that direction. And it was wild because as soon as I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, dude, you need the water's not for cleansing. The water is a portal. It's a
Yep.
portal. The water's a portal device. That's why you have to clean yourself. You have to have
hmm
the portal device. So Misagi is a huge portion. I just wanted to mention that. And you can riff off this too, dude. You don't have to stop there. But if you want to continue with Misagi, go for it. But what are some other practices as well that are super essential in Shinto?
So the belief is that every object in nature has a spirit or kami associated with it.
Yes. Yes.
Now, when we use the word kami is kind of a loaded term because
Yeah.
kami aren't just gods. They can be spirits, they can be nature sprites, ancestors, or even places. Like places can be kami. Like
Yes.
Fuji is considered a kami.
Mount
Um,
what is it? Mount oh, I have it written down, man. I was looking, I thought it was particularly interesting to me.
hmm,
Mount Mawa, is it? I can't
it
remember.
might be.
Yeah, there's one. I mean, there's several, but there's one mountain in particular. They're like, well, we don't have a shrine. Well, the kami is the mountain. It's pretty
Yep,
wild.
yep. That's all over the place.
Yep.
And when you talk about shrines, there are some shrines that are huge, like Meiji Jingu in Tokyo, the resting place of
Okay.
Emperor Meiji.
Okay. Okay.
It's a whole complex. And then you can be walking through the woods, not even on a path, and at the base of a tree will be
Hmm.
this itty bitty little box that kind of looks like a house, and that's a shrine to the kami of that tree. There's now what's interesting about Shinto is there's no absolute good versus evil system.
Right.
It's more about harmony and disorder.
Right.
Um, and that's why to be a Christian is kind of a taboo thing in
Hmm.
Japanese society because it goes against the harmony. Most people are Shinto Buddhists.
Yep.
You're not. What's with that? Any kind of nonconformity is looked down on.
Sure.
So that kind of takes the place of the good and evil. Like you were saying, purity matters deeply. You have to be pure, and like I was saying, nature is just mostly built around nature and the
Yeah.
sacredness of natural wonder.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah. That's really good. You touched on a smorgasbord of stuff right now. Um,
Oh yeah.
so um one of the things I want to elaborate on is that anything can be a kami. And this is actually going back to what you said at the beginning, but it's very important to understand. And it's wild how you hear the language like just twisted into shoot. I mean, I might as well say twisted into submission sometimes.
hmm
One thing that I really notice, Austin, is that there's this, and this actually feels weird to say because it's not really in most even like modern practices of pagan religions. They don't really say that anymore. But every kami is a kami child of the great kami. That's
Yep.
the way that it's looked at, right? It's not
Yep.
like you're a product. It's not like the great spirit that governs over you, like Native Americans mostly think, right? Like a large portion of them do. This is like you're a piece of that kami. And there's weird stuff like even like the expressions like you're part of the divine spark, which is really
Yep.
weird to hear, right? You get like you really do, you get the smorgasbord of ideas, but everything said and done, it literally is like everything can be a kami. Now, take that with a grain of salt. No pun, Japanese is Japan is a salt and water ritualistic
Yep.
based thing, but take it with a
Pretty
grain of
much.
salt that there's one, for example, so in more modern Shinto, you have a mirror in the shrine, okay?
hmm
And that mirror has to be purified and the area has to be purified and blah, 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 all that. And the mirror is not the kami, but the mirror is the reflection of the kami. And
Yep.
once it comes upon the mirror, then that entire spiritual energy is like diffused from like going from that mirror through the shrine, going through that whole space, right? Which is wild too. It's like, dude, like there's so many like I swear Shinto hits on like everything. It's just like, oh, we'll just include it all. It's just
It
everything.
really does.
It's
And
crazy.
the thing about mirrors is, I think I touched on this, in the intro, some of the first ritual objects
Yes, I was.
that we've uncovered have
That's
been
wild.
bronze mirrors. Yeah.
I heard you say that, and I was like, what? Yeah, mirrors are a crazy thing, but so you'll have objects, and they're not quite commies, but they kind of are because they all
Mhm.
stem from the great kami. But these inanimate objects like rocks and sediment and everything, they even then they still have small amounts of what the Shintoists would call sparks of the kami within them. And these inanimate objects are venerated because they're venerated because they're literally kami bodies. There's no other way to say it. They're god bodies, right? Which is not weird. It's not a weird like that's written all over the ancient world, dude. What's particularly bizarre is that we see it in a modern context, right? Like even in Hinduism, like there's not really any, embodiment for the most part. There's not like any embodiment of statues or of
No.
shrines themselves. Like shrines are meeting points and stuff, right? But
Hmm.
but to have nature itself embody the kami and you kind of having to facilitate that, that's very different. That's a very different thing to happen. Thoughts, dude? I'm sure you're boiling at the brim trying to think of stuff here.
Yeah, and you touched on something, that I think is important. So many people don't understand, what an idol really is. Um,
Right.
so, you see these statues in Japan, and it's easy to look at them and say that those are idols. Okay, but the
Right.
Japanese belief is not for it to be an idol, there would have to be the belief that the god or the kami itself lives within that statue. But that's not the belief. The kami cannot
Right.
be confined to that one space.
Right.
So what ends up happening is the worship that takes place, before that statue transcends to the kami itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really weird system,
It's
but
sort of like it summons the kami, so to speak.
yes, yeah, it's
Right.
like a conduit almost, kind of like a
Yeah.
lightning rod for spiritual energy.
Right. And what's particularly interesting about that, and well, we almost have to get into this here in the second half. Well, I'll touch on it real quick because it's really fascinating. So
Mhm.
when I finally kind of got in my head, oh, okay, Izunagi and Izuman Nagi
Izanami and Izanagi.
Nami, thank you. Izunami and Izunagi, when they had these children gods or these children kami, like that interpretation from the Kojiki is what gives rise to this kind of what do we call it? Gendering or creation of children
Yeah,
spirits, right? Gods, whatever we want to call them. Kami is just easier to stick with. It's just like Elohim, honestly. So when we have these children kami, they're all like a piece or a creation of the greater kami. And so that's kind of where that starts to come from. But what gets really fascinating is, and we're not gonna have time to cover all this, so I'm just gonna breeze over it, and then
oh
you
yeah,
and I can talk on this later. But there's a concept that I'm sure you know very well, which is one spirit, four souls for
yep,
human beings. Okay. Now, each one of these souls is believed to have a specific function. But what's particularly interesting to me, this was wild, and this like opens a whole can of worms, dude. Like I was like, my brain was like on fire thinking about this stuff. So what happens is when a person dies, there are four types of souls, like I said, but two belong to one category and the other two belong to the other category. And they're all sort of what will we call it encapsulated in what's called the Naohomitama, which is the one spirit. Okay. Now you have a manifested soul or type of soul, and you have a hidden type of soul. And the hidden is basically the spiritual soul, and the manifested soul is like what you and I kind of are working with here in this world.
Mm.
So when the hidden souls return to the astral realm, basically, right? That which is a whole other topic. It's crazy. And then the manifested souls, especially one in particular, which has to do with destruction and creation, stays here on Earth for a very long time. Okay. Now this is where it gets
It kind of
wild.
falls into that stone tape theory type.
Which one, dude?
It kind of falls into that stone tape theory kind of thinking that the soul or the memory, the energy is imprinted on basically the
Yes.
soil.
Yes. That's exactly right. In fact, remind me, Austin, in the off section, dude. There's this crazy phrase that talks about the generation of a soul having to do with appearing in the shape of a vortex. It was a wild, I think it's probably the craziest thing I read in the whole book. I was like, dude, that's like all of the stuff. Anyway, so when any person dies, this portion, it's called the Aramitama soul, which is like the rough or the wild or the unruly soul, stays here on Earth. And that portion, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's that portion, is like what connects to the astral. And so that gets imprinted onto the mortuary tablet. And that's what families keep at home to pray to and connect with the spirit kami of that person, which is a family member that has passed on. That is wild. Anyway, thoughts on that? And I have many, but I want to hear yours first.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because we do the same thing, in modern society. I still have a picture of my grandma that, has passed away. And, as a Catholic, I ask her to pray for me. It's kind of one of those things where these practices, that seem new have these ancient roots to them.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It was particularly interesting to me also because they say that when there's a tragedy, this is crazy, dude. So this is obviously more associated with negative energy, right? Because that's kind of the way Shinto works. Sin is uncleanliness versus actual like missing the mark, like we think of it. But when someone dies in like a tragic car accident, for example, part of their spirit or part of their soul, sorry, the manifested souls, that is the two, because there's four, right? So two of those souls that stay on Earth, two of them linger in that area, and parts of their or pieces or portions, whatever you want to call it, of their soul, according to Shinto, cannot leave that area until they're evaporated essentially into the higher realms.
That's how you have hauntings and things like that.
It's wild. It's wild, dude. That's wild.
Well, look, dude, I can't tell you how many people. I think we've talked about the triple disaster before. The tsunami of Hoku.
Yeah.
I cannot begin to tell you how many people have passed by, like on a road at night, and there's somebody standing on the side of the road, dripping wet, trying to get a ride.
Yes.
And some people have stopped, and when they let the person in and they look in the rearview mirror, they're gone, but there's a puddle.
That's so
it's
crazy,
like you said, like these places where tragedy takes place, because until you've been to that area, I would go so far as to say you don't get it until you know just how bad that whole situation was there.
Yeah, man. So I think we're coming right up on the hour. If it's not an hour, it's almost an hour. Austin, I have a question for you, and I don't want you to answer it. I want you to think on it, and then
okay.
I'm going to force you to think on it, and then give your plugins, because we're going to shut down this portion and keep going. So, dude, I'm really torn on this idea. I really am torn on this idea, and I want to hear what you think. To me, can there be lingering portions of the soul, and maybe even if not after death, although I'm not really one to say, can there be lingering portions of the soul in physical objects once someone has passed on, or are we talking about spirits themselves? Because from the Shinto perspective, right, it's all one and the same. So it's not a conundrum. But as Christians, that's a legit thing I ask myself. I really I contemplate. I want you to answer that, but not yet. You got my question,
Yeah,
yes?
that's heavy, man.
I know.
Shoot, I could think about it and toss some ideas, but it's probably gonna piss a whole lot of people off.
Well, you can do that on the other side, so we won't piss off too many people. If you guys want to find out, you should definitely listen to the next half. You can sign up on YouTube, Spotify, Patreon. You can do that for $3 a month. It's super cheap. I don't have any plans to raise that price anytime soon, at least unless I do something else that's crazy. If you want to hear Austin's crazy response, you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to get behind the paywall. But I do want you to give your plugins, dude. Where can we find you? What are you doing? Remind us all of everything going on, dude.
So you can find me at my ministry page, which is Ukon's Lantern Ministries. It's on Facebook. I share a lot of devotionals and facts about Japanese Christians, Catholicism in Japan, different things like that. And you can also find my meme page or my personal page. Personal page be Austin Cox, and my meme page is a little Catholic Kappa. So kind of integrate that Japanese mythology in with my faith.
I love it. It used to be the Japanese shy guy thing.
Yep.
But then you just went full Japanese cryptid. You just went straight yokai, dude. You're just like, it's just gonna take the plunge.
I had been planning it for a while because Nintendo is so protective of their IPs. You know, they were cracking down hard, and it was like, I don't want to have to start a whole nother page and
don't blame you.
Have everybody come to me, so I'll just go ahead and switch it. My wife switched hers too. She's a Kitsune, I think.
She used to be Birdo, right?
Yep, used to be Birdo.
That sucks.
Yeah, it kind of does.
I loved that movie, by the way. I know that some people were critical of it. I thought it was great. But
I thought it was great. I actually just made a status about that.
I saw that.
So you can check that out.
Yeah, I saw that. That's cool, man. Cool, dude. Well, guys, please go and support Austin and everything he's doing. His Ukon's Lantern Ministries, where he's really working within his denomination to really see some things happen that I think if you're a Catholic, it's humongous, probably a super big deal to you, and especially if you like Japanese culture, you probably think that that's just cool anyway. But definitely go support him, buy some merch, follow him on Facebook. Are you anywhere else? Just Facebook? Is that your only?
I'm on Substack too. If you want to check out the Substack page,
go give him a Substack. I'm gonna have all that stuff in the show notes, so do that. And again, if you want to hear Austin's response to whether souls can be bound to things after they've passed on to the other realm, you're gonna have to subscribe. So that's my shameless plug to go ahead and
there you go. And you can leave your angry comments for me in the in the comments on Spotify.
Nice. All right, man. Well, thanks for sticking around. We're gonna hop into the next half, and thank you guys. As we always say, you remember? It's God bless.
God bless.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom, and
Maranatha.
Maranatha.
Lord Jesus. You got it, man. Love you guys.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Christian Theological Dark Web Podcast. For all questions, collabs, or comments, contact us at solo.to/thectdw or the Christian Theological Dark Web @gmail.com. To become a special access member or support our ministry, sign up on Spotify or Patreon. This has been another Four Dragons production from the CTDW. God bless, shalom, shalom, and Maranatha. Come, Lord Jesus.